Hello everyone, I welcome you to a lecture on Homer. Now, Homer's work, the Iliad, which is a very great epic, the first epic of the Western literature, is present in your syllabus in your core course 2 paper, which is European classical literature. And in this paper, we need to study the third chapter present in the work, the Iliad. Now, the writer of the Iliad, or Iliad, is actually attributed to a poet called as Homer, who was a Greek poet. And in today's lecture, we are going to discuss about who Homer was, what are the works that are attributed to him, the significance of this particular writer, and the influence that he has had upon not just few great men, but upon the whole world literature. So let's begin. Before we come to Homer, we need to talk about the epics, which were oral in tradition. And before Homer, epics were oral in tradition and they were performed by bards. Who are bards? Bards are actually singing poets. Singing poets are called as bards, and these bards used to perform these oral epics accompanied with a lyre. A lyre is a stringed instrument. You can see the picture on your screen. That is the example of a lyre. And along with this lyre, these singing poets used to, tell about stories, these epic stories accounting the deeds of heroes. Now, these bards were actually considered to be instruments of the muses. And who are these muses? These muses are considered to be the goddesses of artistic inspiration. There were actually 9 muses in Greek mythology, and they are all considered to be goddesses of art and literature. And these 9 muses used to speak through bards. That was the general conception or belief. So, as a result, the bard actually becomes a kind of a vessel of the divine or a kind of mouthpiece of God. So, coming to Homer, Homer was a supposedly blind poet from the island of Chios. You can see the picture of Homer and him being blind on the screen. This is the representation of Homer, and he lived around 7th or 8th century BC. Now, there are 2 great epic poems which are attributed to him, and the credit goes to him for converting them from an oral tradition into a written one. So, these 2 works of art are the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad is the story of the Trojan War, the war that happened between the Greek forces and the Trojans and the great warrior Achilles. The work is martial and heroic in nature. This is one epic that is attributed to him. And the second one is the Odyssey, which is the story of a warrior called as Odysseus. Now, Odysseus was part of the Trojan War, and a prophecy was made on his name that if he, participates in the Trojan War, his return back home is going to be a very long and arduous journey. So the Odyssey, the epic The Odyssey, is about the story of the war, Odysseus and his journey back home. And that particular work is picaresque and fantastic. Picaresque works are those works which have a kind of a journey involved, okay, a story of a long journey. That kind of work is called as a picaresque work. Please note that both epics are written in Homeric or Epic Greek. The kind of language that they are written in are called as Homeric Greek or Epic Greek. Now, before we move on further, we need to discuss something called as the Homeric question. Now, the identity of Homer has always been in a lot of controversy, and the Homeric question actually refers to the question by whom, when, where, and under what circumstances were these 2 epics composed. And this is a topic which continues to be debated even today. The identity of Homer is debatable, as I said earlier, and as a result or as a consequence, the authorship of Iliad and Odyssey as well. Some people believe that Homer is a single individual, it refers to a single person, whereas others believe that Homer actually refers to a group of poets. We only need to know for the time being that most scholars agree that Homer was a single individual. When we talk about both the epics being written in Homeric Greek or Epic Greek, we need to study what exactly is the verse structure in epic. And epic are usually written in hexameter. Okay. There is a lot of technical information which I'm going to give you right now, but you only keep this in mind that an epic is written in hexameter. What is a hexameter? A hexameter is a line of verse containing 6 feet. Okay. What is a feet? A feet is a measuring unit in poetry. We define it in quantitative terms and we use the term as feet. So, feet is a measuring unit in poetry. Each verse or each line of poetry containing 6 feet. Okay, so each line has 6 feet. What is that feet consisting of? That feet is usually in the form of a dactyl. Now, dactyl is a long syllable followed by 2 short syllables. So, a word in which there is a long syllable followed by 2 short syllables. You can see the example of the word fabulous, right? So, in the word fabulous, fab is the long syllable followed by the 2 short syllables thereafter. So, the word fabulous is one dactyl. Okay, so like this, when there are 6 dactyls in a line of verse or poetry, that will be called as a hexameter. What is a syllable? A syllable is a unit of pronunciation having one vowel sound. So one dactyl has one long syllable and 2 short syllables. So like that, 6 dactyls in one line, in a line of poetry or in a line of verse, will be called as hexameter. So that is the structure of the verse in epic. They are written in hexameter. Coming to the next slide, which talks about the significance of the epics. The two epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, are approximately 15,000 and 12,000 lines long. In our earlier classes, we have already discussed what exactly an epic is. An epic is a long narrative poem. Another example of an epic is Ramayana, which consists of more than 24,000 verses or lines. Okay, so similarly, these two epics are also very long in nature. One consists of more than 15,000 lines, and the other one consists of more than 12,000 lines. And these both epics are examples of primary epic. We have already discussed this. What are primary epics? Primary epics are those epics which have been orally transmitted over centuries, and there is not one single author, like one single author has not written that piece of work. When we talk about Homer and the Iliad, Homer is the person who is attributed with the work the Iliad. It only means that he has converted that oral form into a written text. Now, some of the phrases or lines of the poem are almost 3,000 years old because it had been handed over from one generation to the next generation in oral form. So, the story had been continuing since long back. The epic reached Homer fully developed to be recorded. So, when Homer existed, the epic was fully formed, okay, or fully concretized in a narrative, and it was written just after writing was developed. It is considered, particularly the Iliad, is considered to be first and the most prominent work of Western literature, and it is important to note that it has been translated into every known modern language. Now, why is Iliad considered to be important? It is considered to be important because of its complexity. The story is very complex because of the themes. What are themes? Themes are the central ideas which moves the plot forward. It is important because of its plot or storyline. The characters are very dynamic in nature. They change over a period of time. They are not static, but they are dynamic characters. And the language that is used is very rich and it's very alive. Okay, so this is one characteristic of the work, the Iliad. The epic is the story of the Trojan War and the great warrior Achilles, and Homer translated the oral epic into text in around 7th or 8th century BC. We don't know the exact date, but these are the approximate date when this work was converted into a written text. How did we come to that particular date? The date of writing was traced by scholars by tracing the history of oral epics. And it is noted that the language remained intact. Whatever was there present in the oral form, the same form of language is visible in the written form as well. Homer was blind, as discussed earlier, and he used a scribe in order to write this particular work. And he was writing of events which took place almost 500 years earlier. So he was talking about the war which had happened long way back, and the story had transferred from one generation to the next generation through oral medium. The work, the Iliad, gives us a glimpse into the Trojan War period, which, as we just discussed, 500 years back, that is 13th or 14th century BC, as well as a period of the Trojan Greek, 500 years later in the 7th or the 8th century BC. So, when Homer writes the Iliad, he gives you an overview of a long period of time. Homer provides a picture of the Bronze Age. We have already discussed that literature is a mirror of society. If you read the literature for a particular period of time, you will be able to understand how that society looks like, how its people function, and what are the different structures in the society. And so, when you go through the work, the Iliad, it gives you a picture of the Bronze Age, the various burial customs, the tribal organizations, the warfare, the early Greek philosophy, religious life, as well as the social structure. 11th to 8th century BC was considered to be the dark ages of Greece. Why the dark ages? No literature was being produced, art was not given much importance, but after the dark ages, culture was re emerging. And Homer becomes a very significant person because he was an interpreter of the Greek for the Greek, and his iconic works have been highly influential. And to Plato, the Greek scholar and thinker, Homer was simply the one who has taught Greece. So it was through Homer that Greece has learnt about, or the Greek people have learnt about their own history and their own culture and their own society. You will be surprised to note that Alexander the great warrior, he was also inspired by Homer. And in fact, he was educated through the works of Homer, the works like the Iliad, the Odyssey. Alexander had studied these works. These works were earlier written on papyrus by scribes, but later on a standard text was developed, and they wrote it on parchment papers. Homer has been a favorite among the English Romantic poets, and he is critically reputed, admired, and emulated. Emulated meaning a lot of people have tried to imitate him and produce their own forms of writing in imitation of the kind of works produced by Homer. So, this was a little bit of an introduction about Homer. Whatever we have learned today, I hope you will be able to correlate it with the previous lecture that had happened, in which we had discussed about what are epics and what are the various characteristics of epic. And we have discussed Homer today because we will be shortly taking up the epic poem, the Iliad. Thank you.